it's an Asian event aimed at students and the community. The event is held in observance of National Financial Capability Month. And it brings together the School of Business along with the CAU Office of Financial Literacy and the CAU Whitney M. Young Junior School of Social Work. This is the last day of Money Smart Week. And today the Whitney M. Young Junior School of Social Work will be sharing with you some of the innovative techniques and strategies that we have partnered with other schools to do. And so I hope you will enjoy that. As we start, I'd like to first introduce our panelists. We have an esteemed group of women with us today, starting with Gina Gon McClendon. Gina is the co-director of the Financial Capability and Asset Building Initiative at Washington University in St. Louis. Next, we have Ms. Atasha Murray. Ms. Murray is an alum of our school. Very pleased to have her with us. She is the owner of Life Evolutions in Behavioral Health Care. And we have Ms. Beverly Peters Westbrook, who is one of our PhD students, and she is a coaching specialist at On the Rise Financial Center. Please welcome our panelists.
Thank you.
All right, I want to just share a little bit with you about this whole piece around financial capability and asset building and this whole financial literacy piece. I was introduced to this work in probably about 4 or 5 years ago, 2014. And when I got a call from the folks at Washington University talking about this curriculum that they had developed that social workers needed to be trained on or could be trained on around financial literacy and asset building, and that it really encompassed a number of courses in our curriculum. And I had never heard of that. And I, like most people, didn't know a lot about social workers being involved with financial literacy. But to my surprise, my chagrin, I was just amazed when I had an opportunity to be trained on the curriculum and learn more about it. And I tell you that, and Dr. Gunn's going to tell you more about this as we talk, but I share that with you because our role as social workers is vast. You know, we do lots of things, and we encounter a number of families, clients who come to us with some type of financial issue, whether it be they can't pay the rent, whether it be they can't afford the therapy, or just a number of things. And we spend a great deal of time working with them. We can't move on to the other issues that they have in their lives until we help them address the financial piece. So this work goes hand in hand with what we do in our profession. And I think it's not a new concept, but it's certainly something we haven't been thinking about in this way, because there are a number of schools around the country that are doing work around financial capability, financial literacy, starting with the folks up at the University of Maryland, as well as the folks at the Center for Social Development at WashU. So I just want to let you know that this is not a new role for us. It's the work that we've been doing all along. And we need to be more in tune with that, because you can't reach a family in crisis around mental health if you're not looking at the financial aspects of their life. And again, this area has grown, this field has grown so much over the last few years. We have financial therapy now, people coming into therapy because of their financial situation. So I would ask you to just please take a moment to look this up after this meeting is over with. I hope you will gain something from this presentation that you will be able to use and share with your students and use in your classrooms. So now I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Gina McClendon, who's going to share with you a little bit about the financial capability and asset building curriculum.
Hey, thank you, Dean Jones, and welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today. As Dr. Jones said, I work at the Center for Social Development, which is a research center located within the Brown School, which is our School of Social Work, Public Policy, and Social Policy and Public Health. But anyway, some years ago, back in 2013, we proposed that social work education incorporate a curriculum of financial capability and asset building that prepares students to address macro, and meso financial issues with clients and in communities. And so what we started with is developing this curriculum. And it was designed to help students build professional capacity to help low-income and financially vulnerable households achieve economic stability, security, and mobility. But at the same time, while the curriculum is based on the idea that financial capability combines people's ability to act with their opportunity to act to improve financial well-being. The ability to act includes people's knowledge and skills to manage their financial lives, while the opportunity to act includes people's access to financial services, including access to policies and instruments for accumulating assets. The content emphasizes that students learn the following skills. One, how to help families solve immediate financial problems. Two, when to refer clients to other professionals for more in-depth financial counseling and guidance. And finally, how to work in collaboration with others to generate policy and program solutions for financially capable families and communities. So our curriculum actually contains 32 modules and weaves case examples throughout each one. And each module provides the instructor with teaching resources, for example, PowerPoint, slide notes, and includes suggested quizzes, homework, and exercises. So what Dean Jones really wanted me to get to is our recruitment. We purposely decided to work with HBCUs in our pilot, and it was imperative to us for several reasons. One is that I had spent a lot of time working in the South and had a relationship with HBCUs. And so having done this racial wealth gap work, I wanted to be able to extend it a little bit further. So this financial capability and asset building curriculum was right up my alley, was something that I was very interested in. So to identify them, like I said, I had relationships with people before, and I did work in Alabama, Florida, Louisiana, and Mississippi around asset building coalitions, where we provided technical assistance and expertise on developing, advocating, and advancing policies and strategies to address economic challenges, particularly, as I said, around the racial wealth gap. So we took a look at some of the social work programs and compared it to those that I had a relationship with. And so what we decided to do was reach out to those schools that I had a relationship with. Now, here's the piece to this is that I'm working, African American, a Black woman working at a PWI, and I'm reaching out to HBCUs and saying, hey, we've got this great curriculum. Would you consider using it? Well, that didn't necessarily go over well because I'm at an institution where it's a wealthy institution. It's in the top 20. So why would an HBCU have an interest in using the curriculum? So I had to build relationships. I had to build trust relationships. In some instances, I actually went to those schools and sat down with department heads and said, hey, look, this is the deal. So finally, what began to happen is that that trust in what I was doing, I wasn't selling a pipe dream. I was selling something that would be actually needed, because the point is, if you're, the students that HBCUs have are going to go into the trenches, and they, the idea is that this would help them in their professional capacity. And so that's what we did. I also want to say that we reached out to business schools. I reached out to 4 to 5 business schools trying to get them to buy into this, but they didn't get it at that time. But I think that things, because things are a little different and people are more familiar with the terminology, and that had a lot to do with it. Who heard of financial capability in the around 2013. It just was unheard of. So we were able to do that. So along with once we were able to get a cohort of people, we brought them to the university to train them on the curriculum. And what we found is that the instructors that came there for this 2.5-day training, they were able to internalize the curriculum, the information that was in the curriculum, which was interesting. I never really thought about how it needed to be, the curriculum needed to be internalized first. But anyway, we were able to do that. And we had a second cohort, which Dean Jones participated in the following year. The first cohort of schools were Elizabeth City State University, Bennett College, Talladega College, and Tennessee State. And we essentially had 3 types of departmental stakeholders for the participation in the project. And one was instructors who taught the FCAB curriculum content. The other was administrators in the participating program, example, department chairs, program chairs. And then third was faculty colleagues in the department that did not teach curriculum content. Now, why is that important? Again, I had to sell the curriculum, and that was part of that. We needed to contact different people. And of course, every school has its own hierarchy or its own way of doing things, their own protocols. So that's how we were able to identify those 3 groups of people. Kind of going back to the schools, what we found is that once we were able to train people and we got them to really engage in the curriculum and believe in it and were willing to teach it, now the problem became how to, there is a CSWE requirements and things like that. How do you change your curriculum to accommodate this? And so some of the universities got very creative. Like one, for example, what they decided to do, as opposed to creating a whole class, which was our best hope, that there would be a whole class dedicated to it. But then, I soon realized that was, sort of impossible. But what Elizabeth City State University did is that they used more of an infusion process. So they infused the curriculum into different classes, and they started out by working with BSW students that were like in their junior and senior year, and then at some point they infused content from the curriculum starting with freshmen. And so that worked out for them. And in fact, they even took it a step further. They created the FCAB Center for the community. And they're still teaching the content. So I'll kind of stop there because I don't want to go over my time. But the last thing that I do want to say before I end is that when we did our research, we found a couple of things, because we actually went back and interviewed everybody that participated in it. And what we found is that relationships matter, trust matters in order to get something like this going. We also found that the faculty and administrators found the curriculum to be highly relevant. So that was a plus. And then faculty believed that students in surrounding communities could benefit from the content, and they perceived a good fit between the FCAB content and the social work education standards and thought it was compatible for college. So FCAB is relevant to students and communities, relevant to faculty, relevant to program and institutions, and relevance to the profession in general. So it was a very cool project. I developed a lot of new special relationships that I'm very proud of today. So I'll stop there.
Thank you, Dr. Gunn. I was one of those participants with the FCAB curriculum that I got to teach in the policy class. The beauty of this curriculum is that there are sections of the curriculum or guidelines in the curriculum that allows you to be able to teach in almost every class of social work that we have in our curriculum. The intro class, the communities in ORIC class, the policy class, the HIPSI class. And so those of you know me, know policy is my thing. So I had an opportunity to teach that to undergraduate policy students at Florida A&M University. And what was most amazing about that is I had the students to think about, once we started with the curriculum and looked at the kinds of things that was coming out of it, we started talking about, and Dr. Gunn mentioned this, opportunity. Opportunity equals access. Well, let's look at the access that you have to financial institutions in this community around Florida A&M. And so I said, how many banks do you have in this community? Where do people in this community go to get their checks cashed? Is there a fee for that? What does that look like? And then the students started thinking, yeah, that's right. We have to drive all the way across town. What about those people who work and don't have cars and they have to take the bus back and forth to work? Where do they go to check their cash their checks when they get off? Well, the community looks very much like the community surrounding Clark Atlanta. And that is, people went to check cashing places, liquor stores, all of these places that they went to get their checks cashed, charged them. So they didn't have access to financial opportunities or financial organizations in their community. So I posed the question, so how is this a policy issue? What do we do about it? So I had the students make the connection that we're not just talking about how people need to have more money or have money to do things, but let's look at our community and let's look at the access. So we turned it into a policy opportunity to say, let's look at everything. We do a survey of our community. Let's identify those places and let's write letters to our policy folks in that community to say, this is what the data shows for the folks living in that community and how can we help them? And that's the beauty of the of the curriculum, because you really get to use that information in real life information and integrate that into your courses. So I was sold on it from the beginning, because I think the only way that we're going to help folks, poor people with opportunity, is they have to have access. And the only way they can get access is that we have to help change the policies in these areas that really disenfranchise and hurt poor people. So thank you very much, Dr. Gunn, for sharing that. And you guys will hear me go back and forth with McClendon, Gunn. I've just known her so much as Dr. Gina. So so yeah, you'll hear me go back and forth. I'm talking about the same person. But on that note, I want to move on to Beverly Westbrook. Ms. Westbrook is working with On the Rise Financial Center, and she has an opportunity to train our students. We have students placed at On the Rise, and so she has an opportunity to train our students and have some real life experiences around this whole piece in using the curriculum and training social work students on how to work with families who have financial issues. So Ms. Westbrook, I'll turn it over to you.
Good morning, everyone. As Dean Jones stated, I work with On the Rise. I am the coaching specialist. On the Rise is about 5 years old. And initially we were under Inclusive in New York, and we were their first community development program. So the way On the Rise came about is when the community, not far from Clark Atlanta University, was being gentrified. So a community survey results stated that the community wanted an increase in mental health services, health and mental health services. They wanted an increase or the opportunity for workforce development and building those skills. And believe it or not, they also asked for financial education. So here we are today and doing the work. Students had the opportunity to come to On the Rise. Our focus is on wealth building, savings, credit, banking. As was stated, a lot of people in our community use things like friend apps PayPal, Chime cards, and things like that. So we assist them in gaining a connection with financial institutions, IDAs, or what we also refer to as match savings programs, pathways to home ownership, small business. And we have a new program where we're supporting our youth and assisting them in building the knowledge of what it means of finances and money. We also do tax preparation, and all of this is geared towards low to moderate income families. And we're assisting them in building financial, what we call in our workspace is financial well-being. So what impact does this have on the burgeoning social work professional? And so one of the things that we have to first get across is students come to us and they say, well, this is not what I want to do with the rest of my life. So we have to assist them in an understanding that we're training and developing them with the competencies that can help clients in making better decisions about their money. The curriculums is a bit of a mix of several different resources. So we use FDIC Money Smart. We also use Credit as an Asset. And we also use the text from Sheridan, Birkenmeyer, and Collins. And that's the financial capability and asset building in vulnerable households. So it's a mix of curriculum that we use in field practice. So students will say this is not what they want to do, but we assist them in understanding the economic gaps and why they exist and how they can better support families and in building communities. So social workers are often, the message I get from students, this is not what I want to do. They refer to social work as working with DFACS and mental health. So we have to draw the connection for them. And social workers are good in this space because in the classroom, we're learning about human behavior. We're learning about the biopsychosocial. And here On the Rise, they gain an understanding of how the lack of financial resources affect those areas of their lives. And oftentimes students aren't trained in the area of finances, and they don't have the skill set to act when someone comes to them, say for marriage counseling, and the source or the problem is the lack of finances or the misuse of finances within the household, or working with a juvenile who is what we refer to as out trying to get their hustle so that they can help support the family with food, clothes, and those kinds of things, or a person who's on a fixed income that just has $776 a month with Social Security, or even someone who has a felony and finds difficulty in finding work. So in our workspace, we come in contact with all of those individuals, and the students are able to build the knowledge and gain the skills that can help support the families. And the end result is that it has an impact on the individual, the family, it has an impact on the school, as well as the community, particularly a community like the one where we're in, where a new development is going on and gentrification is taking place. Mm-hmm. So students have the opportunity to learn basic terms. What is a 529 plan, right? Financial literacy versus financial education. What does that mean? Emergency savings. A lot of people in our community, if they had an emergency, where would they get $500 to $1,000? And I often refer to this statement where, if something happens in our community, what are we doing? How are we gaining the resources to pay for, say, a funeral? And we're passing the plate, or we're having fish fries, or we're having barbecues over on Bankhead, which is not far from this area, to get the money and get the resources to take care of that business. So students are learning what liquid savings is. They're learning what asset building is. They're learning what financial well-being actually really means. And as they go out into the workplace, that they can better help support families. Another thing that we expose our students to is research, having an understanding of the population that they're serving, what the community looks like. That might include a drive-by in terms of say 3 to 5 miles. What do you see in the community? What do you not see in the community? Libraries, grocery stores. You'll see a lot of churches. You'll see a lot of pawn shops. You'll see a lot of even gas stations where people can go and cash their checks. And so students are learning the impact the lack of financial resources has on families and also on communities. They learn policy, even here at the workplace. Section 8, what is that? What does that mean? Who benefits, who doesn't benefit from those kinds of services? We talk a lot about diversity, inclusion. We understand here that the population in our community has gone through gentrification, and we also is going through regentrification, because this is not the first time our community has been under this kind of distress. So having the students here and preparing them for when they enter the workspace is what we attempt to do by having them here in the field.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Westbrook. And as I was listening to you talk about that work, I remembered when when I first introduced this to the students at Florida A&M, and we started talking about a 529 plan. Of course, I only had one student in the class that's ever heard of that. And then as we talked about the community and access to financial institutions in the community, students wanted to know, well, why did we never learn about this before now? Why didn't we know about these kinds of things? I think it's very powerful when students realize that when they start to learn about money, borrowing money. As we all know, a lot of students get student loans, and at the time when they're getting the loans, it feels good to have the money, the rush of having the money. But when the time comes to pay that money back, and the job that they have gotten doesn't match their ability to pay, then that's when they say, well, why did they let me get all this money? And I just think that having our students understand this, how important this piece is, because if you don't pay the money back, that affects your credit. If you don't have credit, you can't buy anything in this country. Credit is the way to go. And so we just want to help our students do this. And the other beauty about this process is, in social work, we teach people one of the main skills in social work that we teach people to do is problem solve. We're always talking about problem solving. That's what we teach them. So we need to also think about how do we help them learn that skill set when it comes to being financially literate and having understanding financial well-being. I just think that's so important. So thank you again, Ms. Westbrook. We're going to move on to Ms. Natasha Murray. Now, Ms. Murray comes to us with a very unique, interesting path around money. She owns her own company. She works with some of our students are placed with her. Some of our students work with her through a mentoring process. She committed herself and her agency to providing a scholarship to this school. And those students that get the scholarship gets an opportunity to be mentored by her. And they're mentored not only about starting a business, mental health, but the financial aspects of this. Because as Ms. Murray and I have talked, you can't do a business successfully if you don't understand the financial piece. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Ms. Murray.
Okay, thank you, Dean Jones. Good morning, almost evening, afternoon, everyone. Again, thanks for having me. And as I was sitting back trying to understand this financial capability, I actually did some research myself. I was excited about it because it actually goes hand in hand with the entrepreneurship, believe it or not. And one of the things that when we think about a social worker and being an entrepreneur, it's definitely one of those things where we're thinking, like, how can this be? Because when you typically think about a social worker, you don't really think about money and thinking about building wealth. We're always helping others. But what I've learned for the last 19 years is that you can actually get paid for your passion and the work that you do, because we bring a lot to the table. And I think that as problem solvers and having an opportunity to bring a different perspective to the field, it can be quite financially rewarding. And, when I graduated back in the early, 2000s, I really didn't know exactly where I wanted to go, but I kind of knew that I wanted to control my own destiny and kind of wanted to look at things from an Afrocentric perspective. And I know that in some institutions, that's maybe not always possible. And so I had to kind of build my own. And being able to build that, I was able to be a little creative in how the work that I do. And we specialize in working with infants and toddlers in our space, what we call early intervention. And the thing about the disability and the kids, there is no face on that. So we're dealing with, I have low income clients, and then I have some very high wealth net families. And what I have found, as I'm implementing the work that I do, is that many times when you have the families that have resources, their services may look a little different than what someone that may not necessarily have a nanny in the home to have the therapist come into the home and do their work. And so part of what I do is really try to get with my clients and really look at all the resources on the table and begin to educate them about different financial ways. There's grants that you may not have been aware of that your kid may be able to get. He has a diagnosis of autism and he may be able to get some service under the grant. And so I'm ending up helping them look at that and then begin to negotiate like how we can actually get these funds so that we can get the 20 hours of services, or if the insurance company is not paying. And unfortunately, we are still living in a country where it does matter what kind of insurance you have. It can really kind of determine the healthcare that you're receiving. And so we try to close that gap and begin to look at what are the resources that possibly could benefit, the clients. And so, and I also talk about, okay, now that we know that our kid, we know that there's a disability, and we have to understand about long-term, looking at, okay, when my kid is ready to enter school, what kind of accommodations will we need, and even on into adulthood, and whether or not we have, the special needs trust in place so that we can make sure that we're getting our entitlements. Because sometimes when you want to leave a legacy, you have to really have a strategy, because it can actually impact the entitlements that you could otherwise qualify for. And so, and that comes back, again, to how we begin to look at, what's available to us, being able to protect what we have in place, being able to have, the wills in place, the advanced directives in place, so that, in the event that, you're not, as an adult, you're not really able to act upon something, someone else can kind of step in and help you with that. And also, having a plan for your special needs kid, because something could happen to that parent or caregiver. And I've seen, situations where there was no plan in place, and the kid may have ended up going into foster care or some place. We don't really know what ended up happening, to that child. Many of the families, they don't really have a lot of resources where they're able to take in that kid, and particularly with a child with special needs, because there's so much more involved with that. And so with me having my practice, I'm able to touch on some of those things to kind of help them build that plan. And then, you talk about, this money and how it's, it's such a legacy building for us through home ownership, learning about the stocks. These are things that traditionally social workers never really think about, and understanding how compound interest can work for you and build and build that legacy for you and for your family and leaving behind. Miss Beverly spoke about the fact that we, often do these GoFundMes, but did you know that life insurance is a form of building wealth? Because, you may have, you and our parent could have a nice policy, and that could be the generation for you. She could have a nice policy on you, and then you can have that policy to build a financial stability for yourself and pass that on to future generations. And that's what I've been talking a whole lot about with the students that I'm mentoring. And we have a great group of students. And then when we first got started, it was like it was blowing their mind because they just never thought about it as social workers. And then we looked at that wealth gap that we are still trying to address. And we're trying to close that gap. And I think that by providing this curriculum and beginning to talk about some basic stuff on financial, I think that's going to help us move into the right direction and being able to, once you understand financial, understanding credit, and then being able to build business, because you do have to have a solid financial backing in order to start your business and get funding for your business, because there's a whole nother world, in terms of the business side. I know my craft that I learned from my graduate program. However, I had to actually learn the business side of it, which is totally different. And it's just really rewarding, just to kind of see how this is all evolving. And I am hopeful one day that we will see, social work and entrepreneurship taught in the schools of social work throughout the country at some point. And I think that we are moving towards that, because the pandemic kind of, taught us that we could look at different ways and how we deliver our services. Like this technology, we probably wouldn't have thought about this 5 years ago. And so people are able to reach each other. We're able to reach our clients through this technology. And I think that it's going to help us get there further. But I'm just excited about, this financial, and I know that entrepreneurship is one path to building wealth and creating, an income for yourself, and also bringing our students in. We talk about how with the HBCs and how much loan debt that we have. And we're going to have to address that, because we're getting, to a point now that housing is not even going to be affordable. And you're talking about home ownership, and you have, $100,000 in student loan, that may not be a possibility if we don't begin to really look at this. And also, and when you do make it big or have a windfall, in my case, reach back and be willing to give back to your institution. And I've been very passionate about that, because I do believe that we have to look out for our own and be able to bring, and then begin to teach this, even if it's just one student at a time. You just never know the impact that you may have on it. So I'm going to stop here, and hopefully we'll have some time, some questions and answers. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Ms. Murray, for sharing that. And I was just kind of thinking as you were speaking, particularly when you start to talk about our students and the student loan debt. I just believe that to impact that, we have to start early on with them, teaching them about money, teaching them about knowledge and skills around money and what that looks like and how that impacts their lives. Because I can assure you from my own self-disclosure here, when I came to get a PhD, I had no bills. I just, I planned to go to school. I had paid off my bills, and I was just going to come to school. And I really didn't, I had never had a student loan before. And so I came to school here and saw how easy it was to get a student loan, and everybody got them. So I got one. And not really understanding, I was a full adult, but not really understanding the impact that would have on me, particularly around payback and and credit and all of that. And so I think we have to help our students understand what that means for them down the road, long term, because you can sign on the dotted line and get the money very quickly, but when the time comes to pay it off with the type of job that you have and not having the family support, Miss Murray talked a lot about, you know, the different types of families that she works within her business. There are people who, the high-end people who have money that can afford services. Well, those families who don't have money and they're trying to get services through some sliding fee, don't have that luxury. So I just think we have to start early teaching our students about money and credit and what that means for their future and their success down the road. So I'm gonna stop here. Then we'll start with some questions, or I don't know if there's anything in the chat or any questions from any of you, comments. Oh. Okay, it says, thanks for the great session, exciting work in Atlanta. I have a question. Can you discuss how to bring this work into social work education? Social work faculty say there's so much to cover already and students aren't necessarily asking. Good question. Beverly, you want to, or Gina, either you want to take a stab at that?
So that, I mean, it is a great question. I think that we need to get this out in front of more the decision makers. So, you know, more deans, more department heads and things like that. And which is what we tried to do, you know, initially back in 2013, is to get this whole curriculum in front of people. Unfortunately, our resources, we had a grant from Wells Fargo in order to do this work, and that grant ended it. So that's the downside of getting grant money.
Yeah.
It only goes so far. But I would say if there's a way to get this in front of the decision makers in the social work programs, whether it's through CSWE or whether it's just one school at a time. Yeah.
One idea that I have, I've spoken with Dean Jones about, is perhaps even implementing the financial education piece in those courses where they're mandatory for students, for new and incoming students, where they're learning about professional development and building all of these other schools, having that financial education be a part of that curriculum and that they're learning it at that level.
Go ahead, Dr. Wright. I'm going to try to turn the camera on you.
So one of the things that I think we do here in the School of Social Work
That's not, I got
is to be intentional, particularly in field, to have our students understand, for instance, competency number 3, advanced human rights and social and economic environmental justice, and connecting that as well to the Afrocentric perspective and the concept of autonomy, which talks about the freedom of self and action to confront and not conform to racial oppression and eliminate all forms of racial oppression. Because we see the movement, and I know that Professor Westbrook does that a lot with the students that are placed with them, because we see this movement to address anti-racism, structural oppression, and understand those connections. And I think if we are more, at least here in the School of Social Work, we are more intentional about helping our students to understand those concepts and understand how that plays out in their field practicum through their discussions. And I think we have one of our students here, and I'm sure she can talk about some of that because you've asked questions about that. And we can talk a little bit about how that plays out for you in the curriculum.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jessica Weaver. I'm an advanced A social work student. I'm graduating in May. But I'm happy to be here. I'm very passionate about financial literacy. Dr. Laura can tell you, Dr. Thomas can tell you. But I definitely see the need in the social work field, the social work department. I'm graduating a lot, so my passion is financial literacy, and I'm really eager to figure out how to incorporate that in just my next steps. Because I'm really passionate. I'm just really bridging the gap, and I guess that's kind of my struggle moving forward, and how I can kind of do both the social work aspect and also the financial aspect. But I definitely see everything you guys are talking about and the need for this curriculum in our program. I really think I saw the need my first day in undergrad. Of like financial literacy is I mean, finance piece is the biggest issue. So I definitely see the need, and if anybody has any advice on how I can just moving forward next steps on how I can really kind of bridge that gap and kind of focus on both of my passions with financial literacy and also social work.
I was just going to add to what Ms. Westbrook said in terms of how we can get this out, and at the same time, and try to answer the question from the chat. The curriculum is packed already. There's a lot in social curriculums and that we have to cover, particularly as it relates to the competencies. But I do believe that we can start with some pieces of this FCAP curriculum. Like I said, there's in each of the courses, human behavior, the intro to professional helping, social policy, in the macro course around communities and orgs. There are places in those courses that some of this content can be inserted. We may not be able to use the entire module, but there are places where that can be inserted. And I think we're doing our students and the families that they're going to serve a disservice if we don't do this, because we're going to have our students, particularly our students at HBCUs and minority serving institutions. We're going to have them graduating usually with a lot of debt, going to work and job that's going to pay a modest amount of money, and then working with families who are struggling with these issues. And so I think that there's a place. We just have to be creative. I'm going to say this. I'm on the board at CSWE. I don't think CSWE has to approve what we teach in our classes. What we have to demonstrate to CSWE Commission on Accreditation is that the competencies are being addressed and the students are doing well in that. That's what we have to do. So I think we need to start thinking about this a little different and not necessarily asking for CSWE's permission, but at the same time, integrating this information into our curriculum as long as we are addressing those competencies that we have identified for those particular courses, and have some assessment piece to cover that, so we'll be able to demonstrate outcomes. And I love CSWE. Any other questions, comments? The other thing that I just wanted to add, particularly, and I think Ms. Murray, you mentioned this too about generational wealth, helping our students think about preparing for generational wealth. I tell you, we have got to do somehow as a university, all of these universities, we've got to find some other way to work with our students and help them understand about this debt, this student loan debt. Yes, it's expensive to go to school, but they get trapped with that student loan debt, and they don't realize that they're trapped until it's time to get out of school and pay for it. And I just, again, see parts of this curriculum helping them understand becoming more literate about money, but also having them look at the whole capability, the ability piece. They got to be knowledgeable about this information. And that's what I think we can do with them. And I plan to talk with our person here at Clark Atlanta who does the financial literacy course. And I know she's had a number of activities all for the last few days for Smart Money Week. And that she's offered the students. But I plan to talk with her about how can we take some pieces of this and integrate into what she does with the students so that we can start trying to get this information out to them as much as possible. I mean, it would be great if we could just take the whole curriculum and say, we're going to teach the curriculum and integrate it into every class. But if we can't do that now, or we haven't reached that point now, I think we can start implementing some aspects of it into some of the things that we're already doing.
Dean Jones, you were just speaking about school debt and how that can impact people for many, many, many years. Policy is really important in this area because there's a policy that says that there's loan forgiveness under certain circumstances. Biden also had a recent policy where you could not be denied a home loan or home ownership solely based on your school loan debt. So those are things that I think are important for students to understand, to know and be aware of, not only as they work in the field, but also for themselves. And our students walk away with a lot of stories and have their own testimony in terms of how they were able to eliminate debt and now using the skills that they have learned to venture out on their own and teach it. When they pursue, I have a former intern that's now in a PhD program that is taking what she learned to now at her new university be able to teach this to incoming students.
Yeah. And I think that's how we have to build this, little by little, brick by brick. And I think that's how we'll be successful with it. Ms. Murray, you were gonna say something?
Yes, and I also think it would be a great idea as also even as an exit strategy when the students are actually graduating, maybe have a seminar on what that looks like and start that emergency, saving that emergency fund. We talked about that with my group of students, having, 3 months at minimum, 3 to 6 months of an emergency. So you don't have to always run and max out the credit card when there's an emergency. And also teaching them how, when they do get their first job, take advantage of the retirement plan. You'll be amazed at how many people leave money on the table and they don't even consider saving in the entire retirement savings plan at all. And, and the companies many times are matching that dollar for dollar. And we talked about compounding interest and how powerful that is. And being able, they'll go, well, I can't really afford it. But yet, you can spend a $5 or maybe $8 now a day on coffee, and you add it all up in a month's time. And being able to put, especially the younger students who have time on their side, and you put away that money and just let it compound interest. And then 25 years later, I mean, you have a nest egg, and we have to start teaching that from the day. I mean, I even had a challenge for my students. When you get your job, get some life insurance. Look into that for yourself to set that up while you're still young, and you are able to be insurable and no health problems. You don't wait till you get 40 years old and then decide, okay, now this is what I want to do, and you have health problems, and then you really can't qualify. So it's that time is on you guys' side. So I like to see doing an exit seminar where you can talk about these things so that the students can have that as they begin their professional journeys.
Thank you. That's an excellent idea. I would like to do it at the beginning and at the end. I think this would be an excellent course to do in our freshman seminar, but that would be a huge hill to climb. But I think starting out when they get here, if we're using this curriculum to teach some aspects of this to our students. They come in understanding, some understanding about money and these concepts and what that looks like for them. And then do it on the way out, taking what you've learned from the beginning and looking at on your way out, how do you maximize that for yourself as you go out and start your career? That would be really, really great. Our student wanted to say something. I'm sorry, Nathan. Go ahead.
Well, I actually wanted to maybe piggyback off what Jessica was saying. I wonder for the students who are graduating right now and who are listening to this program, what are some quick tips that they can take with them as they leave the program concerning money? So what can you do this summer or after this program itself, just to get started on building that security, building that intellect and knowledge about money, and both with themselves and with the communities that they're going to be serving.
That's a good question. That's a good
Anything
question.
off the cuff, I think is helpful.
Well, I think for our students here, we can certainly do an exit seminar where we can share this information with them, help them think through what their next steps might need to be, and in hopes that they will then share that with others. But yeah, I think we can do that here in our school. We can certainly do that.
I was gonna add, I really think the exit seminar would be a great idea. That's something I wish I had coming out of college, but I recently got licensed in the life insurance industry. And I see that that's a big way, a quick way to into generational wealth. But what I'm finding while I'm trying to relay this information, this education to people in my age group, we don't have the foundation of so like when we're talking about student loans and paying it back, it's not on our minds because we don't know how much, we don't even know how to manage the money that we're getting. So when we graduate and we're going off and getting these jobs and we're making money, our first thing is to go splurge, but we don't understand how much we're splurging on, and if we kind of change our mindset on a better way to spend money, how that can kind of change things moving forward, how we can get to that house at a young age. And so I definitely think the exit seminar would be great. I would love to help in that aspect if possible.
Signed up right now.
Recently, I'm so passionate about, and I saw the need for a budget and put it on social media, and I'm gonna tell 10 people with a budget, and a couple of people are really making a lot of money and they're just blowing it, and they're not even saving it. And so with the life insurance piece, not only when you die, you're building wealth, but also you can also use that as a savings mechanism. And that's something that I'm really trying to execute and push out to my generation, really to anybody, honestly. But it's just so many things that's out there that we're not aware of, and really the importance of the foundational pieces of the budget and how much to put aside, or how much to put in a 401k. They don't teach us this in school. And we go out, and our first step in after graduation is a bad financial, situation. Constantly, building a whole.
And it just compounds. It
Yeah.
just gets bigger and bigger. Yes. Well, thank you, Jessica, very much for bringing that up. Like I said, we can certainly do that here in the school. I'm gonna talk with some of the other folks on campus about starting with this, I think it's a teacher. Talking with her about maybe we should do something at the beginning, well, maybe we team up and do something at the end, but maybe start thinking about what we do at the beginning of the semester when students come in. There should be some type of workshop or something that they can attend to. At least start, let's hear this. I think, knowledge is power. At least start giving people that information so they can start thinking about what this is going to look like for us. Nathan?
I think this is really key too if we're talking about decolonizing social work education. I think, the reason why we're not learning this in grade school and undergraduate stuff is we're being taught to be obedient to the workers and join the workforce and create power and autonomy for other people, for just a small group of people, right? And I think if we're going to truly do innovative liberation movement, decolonize social work practice, we have to teach people about wealth and holding autonomy, holding power, and doing that at the very beginning waiting to announce it. It has to begin as early as possible. So I think, yeah, I think it needs to be embedded into our social education in a lot of different ways.
Yeah. We have another question, comment and question in the chat. These issues are also relevant for small business. I know who did that. These issues are also relevant for small businesses too. A primary obstacle that Black-owned businesses face is a lack of access to capital, and this is often related to historical discrimination by and exclusion from networks and connections to people and institutions with financial resources that can be leveraged to support the launching and expansion of their businesses. So policies that address these obstacles are necessary and can be promoted by social workers. And you are absolutely right, Tony Mallon. Thank you for putting that in the chat.
Yeah, if I could add something to that, we recognize that as a problem as well, and we're working to build our small business program here at On the Rise. We have partners and connections with programs in our community, such as ACE, that offers small business loans. We also can assist our clients in gaining access to financial institutions that offer the credit building loans. So when they come in and they have a low credit score, there are options, there are opportunities. Also working with other programs in our community, such as the Urban League of Greater Atlanta. So together, as we're talking and we're having these discussions, we're able to work in partnership and better support our community.
I just wanted to point out, and thank you, Rashwada, that we have an FCAB listserv, and if you're interested in joining the listserv, I just dropped my email address in the chat, and feel free to reach out to me and we'll add you.
Sorry, didn't mean to touch that.
Are we done, John?
I also wanted to add as well, is also, helping our students to understand that they can take advantage of these small business development centers that are in these colleges, University of Georgia, Georgia State University. When I first started, I didn't have a whole lot of money. Can you guys hear me?
Keep going.
Okay, I didn't have a whole lot of money to pay professionals when I first got started. And I took advantage of the small development centers right in my community. And they helped me to become competitive so that I was able to compete with certain set-asides and was able to get small business loans. And, we were recently able to take advantage of the PPP program and get those loans forgiven as a woman's own business. So I encourage to look into those resources as well to help you become competitive, because a lot of times I hear that it's not, we have, there can be limited access, but a lot of times we're not even competitive to be able to compete with what it is that we want to, what the requirements are. Many times we don't have the requirements.
And I just want to say, I think we got like 2 minutes. I just want to say, and to Dr. Mallon's point about the policies that address these obstacles for small business people are necessary and can be promoted by social workers. And that goes back to the whole policy aspect of this. And just like the right to vote, the only way to change policy is through advocacy and voting.
Absolutely.
Hand in hand. You first gotta know what the issues are. And we know Black-owned businesses, small businesses are usually discriminated against when it comes to trying to get a business started and trying to borrow money, because all the policies in place are in place for them not to be able to get these things. So that's why I can't stress enough about the part of this curriculum that I used in my policy class was amazing, because my students, while I was talking about the community around Florida A&M, what they was hearing, what's not just myself, it's gonna help me. And that was good, because that's what I wanted them to know. But in knowing that also, what can we do to improve our community? Because we know people we got families that live in these communities. And so I think that the advocacy, the policy, problem solving are the parts of this that we can start to implement with our students now to help them make a difference in the work that they do and make a difference for themselves. So Jessica, I'm so glad you're here. I will be getting with you. We will do an exit workshop around this information. If we need to have our panel be a part of that, I will certainly talk with them and we can make this happen. All right, thank you all so much. Panelists, thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
One comment. I think that's an excellent idea, and I think that it should come out of our Center for Social Reform and inclusion with the addressing something. So thank you.
There will be a small fee to that. All right. So thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you spending this hour with us, sharing your insights and the work that you've done on this. And I will be following up with each of you. I'm always happy when a student comes to participate. So Jessica, we're so happy that you. All right. Okay. Thank you all. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
I think